Hey everyone, welcome back to another Dragonheir video, and in this video we'll be going over some of the amazing champions in this game. These I like to call true DPS. Like, these are the main damage dealers and the rest of them are pretty much subpar. And this is especially true for PvE. For PvP it's a different story entirely, and I'm not really sure like why this game has it. I also asked their support that, if some of these champions have a lower rate than the others, but they told me like every champion has the same rate, although it doesn't feel like that. Exclusives definitely feel like they are harder to pull than some of the other champions in the game. But regardless, let's go over these, and let's start with fire. The main true damage dealer in fire, especially in PvE, is none other than Flora. I think everybody knows this. I've made several content regarding the game where I'm fighting against Vortex, or it could be some dungeon, and she's probably the main damage dealer of the game for me. And the rest of these units who are also wild, like Eric, Felicity, Casper, Rash, these are mainly just support. And even if you look in the epics, right, Tona is also a support, Alfie, Foley, these are all like DPS support units. What I mean by DPS support is they enable the main damage dealer to basically increase her damage even further. And it's kind of a shame. There is another unit in this game, in this affinity, that is also kind of like a DPS support, and that's the new unit added, Casper. He's definitely not as strong as Flora, but he's pretty interesting, right? So whenever he places his ult, there is some sort of a debuff that is placed on top of the enemy, and whenever your wild units get a successful wild check, he's going to be throwing these these daggers. And these daggers, although they say 20% attack, but they do take a lot additional damage. I don't know why it says 20% attack. It definitely is more than 20%. They can crit, so crit damage bonus and everything also applies. It's not like a derivative damage dealer, it's a straight up damage dealer. So he is one of those things who also benefits from a complete wild team, although the damage is nowhere near what Flora is, right? So keep that in mind. The rest of the units in this game, such as Eric, Felicity, Tonalan, Rosh, everybody else is somewhat different. They do damage. It's not that they don't do any damage, but their damage is nowhere compared to these two, right? So rest of them are kind of played this support task in most of the team compositions, especially once you pull somebody like Flora or Casper, and that's how they function. So these are the two damage dealers, the true DPS units in the Wild faction. And let's move over to Frost. Frost, I think, lacks a true DPS for PvE. They're all very good champions, but they are more specific in arena or content where you don't have to worry too much about a boss HP, right? There's one derivative damage dealer somewhere in the epics. I forgot who it was, but most of the time it's sort of like, somebody's going to be applying frost, the other one is going to be doing damage based off it. You can intertwine the range, but one of the coolest champion is actually a rare, is Usha. Usha is a phenomenal damage dealer, and her passive is what makes her pretty much amazing, right? Every second attack deals a double damage. So whenever you have frost on, it's going to hit for a lot harder. And against PvE bosses, not specifically PvP, but in PvE, she can truly shine compared to some of the other champions. The only other true DPS sort of role in this, I don't think there's anybody who's in this affinity that is a true DPS by any means, but Osha also fills a role where his passive is going to fire off this additional arrows towards the target who are under frost, and he gets his ultimate really fast. He also has a really high crit damage, and attack interval is very low. Solid base stats all around, so he deals a lot of damage in a frost comp as well. But overall, in this composition, you're mostly looking for champions that apply frost versus champions that are benefiting from it. There's no one true damage dealer. Like if you don't have Oster, you have Trollgar. Sure, it's a melee unit, but let's keep that aside for a minute. Even Trollgar does amazing damage, right? His damage is quite amazing when you have somebody else applying frost on them, right? So there are damage dealers for sure, but it's not as specific as the wild we saw. There are some amazing damage dealers here for arena. Oster, Havatar, Trollgar, like they all shine in PvP, but in PvE, like Usha can pretty much out damage some of these legendaries if they're not inspired and all, right? Oster might still be able to out damage her, but Usha is amazing for this faction, for this affinity. In summons, there is one true DPS. I really feel like it's Lulanis, but Galeore, whatever his name is also pretty good. But the way they synergize, it's one of the weakest faction. Personally, I feel like the affinity is like really, really weak in a lot of different areas. Even in arena, I feel like if it wasn't paired with Frost this season, it would not be as strong. And the reason being that the synergy is very much lacking, right? Like they have melee, they do summons, then they have to, like take Lulanis for example, right? To build her up, her stack, she needs to have 20 dead enemies or 20 dead allies, whatever you want to call them, these summons, and then she's at full stacks. And the stacks are pretty powerful in arena. She's one of the best units to have if you are facing against tanky units, you know, those revivers and healers all the way along. So she's pretty powerful in that, but the entire faction deserves some love. I feel like they need to fix some of the, they need to make some more support units that are better. Torrent is a decent support, but nothing truly special. Berengar is an amazing tank. There are some amazing damage dealer, like Irzilas is a DPS support, right? He's a DPS. He's marked as a summon, which is a DPS, but he is a DPS support. He provides attack up to all the summon allies, and he's, especially with Lulanis, he synergizes really well. Sharlak is more of a standalone DPS. He's going to summon one of the best summons that you can have, which is the Fear Bear, and it's really strong. Galeore benefits from, you know, people who already have a lot of summons going on, and he's going to have derivative damage. But this is his very weak affinity. Frost and summons, I feel like, are the weakest affinity for all PvE content in the game. There is basically nothing. Zarok is a notable mention for a true DPS. Like his stacks also take a lot of time, right? And his attacks stacks up to like 30 times, which is amazing. So there are some decent champions, but it's not like they're like true DPS. Besides Lulanis, there's nobody in this affinity that is that strong. Now next up is Rally, and Rally, I think the true DPS are two units, which are going to be Thilindor and Filter. I know a lot of people play with Huberg, and his damage is also decent, but if you have 3 slots, and let's assume you have all the champions in the game, you want Huberg or you want Thilindor or Filter in that slot, the true DPS. And then the 2 DPS support are going to be Lorenthiel and Alton. Alton is amazing. He also does a lot of damage. I'm planning to make a video on him alone. He dealt around like 200k per hit of his ultimate, and I think it hits 5 times if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, every 2 seconds. So yeah, 5 times it hits. It's pretty cool ultimate. And he also brings in a lot of damage buff, and he fills in the gap where Lorenthiel is not providing you with Rally. So the true DPS is definitely Thilindor. And I don't know if you guys know this, but I recently got max inspiration for Thilindor, and it's quite broken. For those of you who don't know, his max inspiration basically makes him one of the best DPS units, and I don't think that inspiration should be that strong. This entire thing where he strikes these 3 enemies at most with this moonlight beams of his ultimate is going to take effect even after he dies, which is just broken. I personally don't know of any other champion in the game that can do that. But yeah, he's that strong for Radiance. Also, in this, like if you don't have Tillendor, Filto, Huberg is great to fill that role. But also like champions like Hagio is also pretty amazing with damage dealing abilities. Alvis is more of your DPS support unit. He's going to provide the attack up, crit rate up, whatever his buffs are, if I remember correctly. Yeah, crit rate bonus, crit damage up. So there are definitely some synergies that you can create. All you want is somebody who can definitely provide rally, consistently provide rally to your main true DPS in this faction. Besides Hagio, Welby is a good one too, but yeah, if you're comparing legendaries to them, it's going to be hard to compare. But even if you have Laurentiel and Alton, you would still want somebody like Hagio in there, right? 3 DPS plus 2, right? So that's the composition we go for. Nazjinka is more of a solo damage dealer. I feel like even if you have a Dauntless team, it doesn't really work. Ivelios is your true DPS in this affinity. Ivelios and Nazjinka both deal exceptional damage, but Nazjinka can deal damage like pretty much by herself. But Ivelios benefits from other Dauntless heroes, right? So your Tharviol, Garrett, Sutha, they're all very good damage dealers in Arena. These two are being melee kind of suck, because melee you have to, they always rush in and then it's hard to control where you place them. Tharviol is amazing too in Arena if you want to place him. And the biggest problem with the faction is lack of supports, lack of healers mainly. But you do, with Ivelios dealing derivative damage, it's pretty amazing to have like somebody like Sutha, Garrett or Tharviol. Tharviol personally is my best choice because his attack speed is way too high with his ultimate. And his ultimate has a very short cooldown recharge time as well. Right, so the first ultimate fires at 9 seconds, which is pretty good. Like if you look at Tamar, it's going to be 12 seconds initial ultimate. So his ultimate goes away very, very quickly. And with Ivelios, you don't really need attack speed, but whenever you're building a damage dealer or DPS support for Ivelios, you want a lot of attack speed in this one. Nazjenka is pretty much standalone, but Shalter is another one of your true DPS. You can definitely build a team around him. He deals derivative damage as well, and he benefits a lot from other lightning or dauntless heroes in the game. For poison, I think there's only one contender here. Actually, Jatalia is also there, but I personally don't like Jatalia. Lothair is one of the best derivative damage dealer besides Flora. He is amazing. He can hit like 1,000,000 per hit or more than that, depending upon the number of stacks you have. Right, Lothair is just one of those units which I definitely want more dupes of, and he can do pretty much. I think in the next season where the wild is not paired with poison, the poison team will be the best damage dealing comp on Vortex. But he has this passive where he deals derivative poison damage to the enemy based on the number of stacks of poison they have. So at 40 stacks is the limit. You can reach up to 40. So he's the true DPS, and so is Jatalia. Vakania is also there, but yeah, their damage don't compare close to them. But whenever you're building a team around this thing, there's some notable mention actually. Let's just go over all of them. So you want Durango as your DPS support. You want Koren as your DPS support. Twitch is a DPS support, Shink is a DPS support. And what I mean is like these are the poisoner applier. They're gonna make sure that the boss has enough poison or the enemies have enough poisons, and so your derivative damage dealer can do insane amount of damage. And one of the best thing is like a rare champion is also very, very good. He deals like 40% attack derivative damage, which is quite a lot, right, for a rare. So even if you have Durango, Twitch, etc., you can still use Ellie for your derivative damage dealer. He's pretty strong. But Lothair is going to be really, really powerful. With Lothair, you don't really have to worry about timing of the ultimates, except for the one who's going to be placing your defense down, right? Outside of that, you don't really have to worry too much about timing because you just want the stacks on the boss. With Vacania, you have to worry about timing because the moment she ultimates, she has like 10-second window of the mark where you want to apply as many poisons. I recently made a video on her. She was sort of buffed, or at least what they say, but yeah, this skill used to do 40%. Now it's 105. But I think the previous one was kind of a little bugged from what I've heard, but I don't know. You guys tell me. My testing before was that she did 45 million, and after the buff she dealt about close to 100 million. So yeah, there was a gear difference, psyche core difference. So I don't know if she was buffed or not personally. If she was buffed, she does need more buffs to be competitive, to at least do 80% of the damage of what Lothair and Flora does, right? It just doesn't make any sense for me. But with Jatalia, the way the timing would work is like she would explode first, or so her ultimate, she does additional derivative damage based on the number of stacks that have. But the problem is like they explode, and she kind of steals the damage from the other champions as well. So the poison exploder gets the damage numbers from the poison appliers, right? So if a poison is applied for one tick and they do like 5,000 damage, that 5,000 is not going to be counted towards Durango, right? So that's why I personally don't like her, because it makes it very hard to judge a team with Jatalia. But you definitely want to have enough stacks before she does her explosion, and that she's going to deal additional derivative damage. Not nowhere near what the Lothair numbers are going to be, but yeah, that's pretty much about it. But that's pretty much about it. I think there isn't any other sort of true DPS here. There is Cigarette, notable mention, but she's not a true DPS. She's technically supposed to be a support unit, right? But she comes out with the damage numbers, which makes me feel like she's bugged. But unless devs say like, no, it's not bugged, that's what we intend for her to be, then it's fine. But she's a pretty solid champ. If you're struggling in arena, use her. She can one-shot legendary teams like nothing. But yeah, that was pretty much it for today, guys. Let me know in the comments below what else we would like to see. And until then, take care.